little bit ago, USDA came out with their brand new export inspections numbers. That's right, they came out on a Tuesday because the government offices were closed yesterday and there was no market activity yesterday. So here's a look at what we had. This would be up through January the 13th. On the corn last week, we had shipped out of the country 1.2 million tons. The week before, 1.02 million. Sorghum, 141,850 last week. That compares to 201,482 the week before. Soybeans, 1.72 million tons were shipped out of the U.S. last week. That was a pretty healthy number. 985,000 the week before. The wheat, 369,188 last week. That's a little improvement over the 234,356 that we had the week before. Well, as we look at our market action, last time we checked, everything was bouncing quite a bit. And now we have things kind of cooling off a little more. We have the March corn currently just a half-cent higher at 5.96 3/4. And July is down 1/4 cent. December is down a half-cent at 5.57 3/4. So that big surge we had in the last half hour has pretty much fizzled out, if you will. Soybean trade had been sharply lower, but now we have March soybeans 6.5 lower at 13.63 1/4 per bushel. In that November new crop soybean contract with our quotes provided by bar chart, we are now at 12.87 and that is down 5.5 cents. Now there for a while it was actually down about 11 cents. Now if you look at wheat in Chicago, March is trading 22 higher yet at 7.63 per bushel. In the Kansas City market, you have that nearby March contract, 22 higher at 7.67. Now in Minneapolis spring wheat, which isn't even in the ground yet, March is up 17 cents. We're at 8.95 1/4. Cotton market today on the March contract up 66 points. Well, there it is, back up above 120. You got to see it live here, 120.43 per pound. The high is 120.60. Crude oil trade has been making big moves today. Right now, we're up $1.18 a barrel, right at exactly $85 on the February contract. I want to bring in Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. I'm hearing there was an attack on the United Arab Emirates overnight or over the weekend, and that's prompting a rally rather in the energy markets. Is that providing a little spillover support here to the grain and soy oil or not?
Yeah, good morning, Marlon. I think that is the case, getting some support, especially in the wheat market, where tensions between Russia and the Ukraine remain very high. There's other countries involved in this as well, so there's a lot of turmoil in that part of the nation, and that is really pushing wheat values sharply higher here today. Otherwise, the fundamentals are pretty negative for the wheat market, but with wheat moving that much higher, oats also having a pretty big move, it's hard to keep a pressure on the corn and soybean markets. Our inspections that just came out, a little bit supportive. The export sales that came out on Friday and today, also supportive, especially to the soybean market, where they switched that tonnage from corn to soybeans on Friday morning.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's bring up the oats prices right now, and these quotes from bar chart show big gains. March oats now 25 cents higher at 6.34, just a penny and a half from our high of the day. It's off of its overnight low here by a good 20. Well, no, let's see, what would that be? That'd be about 32 cents. No, excuse me. Yeah, about 28 cents. Anyway, big gains here on the oats market in the early going today, that's for sure. Well, we'll come back and we'll talk more with Brian Hoops, and we'll talk about livestock, and we'll talk about the money flow in and out of the equity markets as well, right after this. As we get into our livestock segment, I wanted to review the cutout information that came out from USDA yesterday afternoon. Yes, they did actually have some folks that were working putting together that data. And big gains on the beef cutouts yesterday. Wow, choice cuts up 385. They put a price at 287.86 per hundredweight on that market, and selects were up 308 at 277.05. So that means the spread is now $10.81. The choice cuts at 287.86 would be compared to 276.04 a week ago. So they're above that still by about $11. And on the pork side of things, we had some gains there too on the carcass values. It was up $2.87 yesterday. The hams were up $7.50 and then some, and the bellies were up $2.16. Let's go back to Brian Hoops here and talk about these markets here for a little bit. The cash cattle market last week was pretty weak in the knees, actually down a couple of bucks. But the wholesale trade continues to just roar higher. Something's got to give here, Brian. You can't keep going both directions like that forever, can you?
No, usually you can't keep going that in that direction, Marlon. But we're hearing an outlook for the cash markets to be fully steady this week. Show list numbers really are unchanged for the last 2 weeks, still in that 265,000 head range. So thinking that the cash markets are pretty called steady right now without a lot of direction. Friday, you have cattle on feed report coming out. That looks to be a little bit of a negative report. And that's probably going to keep a lid on any rally attempts in the cattle. Plus, you have the stock market sharply lower today. And just these concerns about the virus and it spreading all around the country, how it affects consumer spending, is really weighing on the minds of the traders. It's hard to imagine cattle futures really ramping and soaring higher when the stock market is down and the concerns about the virus continue to spread and hurt consumer spending.
So the March Dow Jones Industrial Average futures are right at exactly 500 points lower right now, 35,296. A lot of concern in that equity market these days, a lot of fear about interest rates too moving forward. March U.S. dollar index futures are 524 points higher. We're at 95.685. Meanwhile, over on the livestock futures, if you go to live cattle right now, you currently have the February up a nickel, April up a dime at 142.22, but just not doing much of anything here. In the feeder cattle market, you currently have the March contract 45 cents lower. We're at 165.92, off our earlier high of the day by about 70 cents now. In the lean hog trade, well, those early gains have pretty much gone. You have February down 22 cents at 80.67. April is now up 7 cents. We're at 88.52. The May, the biggest mover to the upside, that's up 35 cents right now. Well, Brian, thanks for the help this morning. Always good to hear from you, and we'll talk with you again here real soon. Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. And that's a look at our market at midday.